Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel. This is Jason. We're so glad that you chose to join us today and hope that you stick around with us. Today, we are going to be discussing something that honestly, I'm a bit shocked that we haven't done this yet because it is, again, one of the most integral parts of most books. Not every book, right? But
Yeah,
most books, I feel like, has some element of this. Maybe not a whole lot, but some. At least some of the most satisfying. What am I talking about? Can I drag this out any longer, you ask?
no, because I know, but I know you don't know. You're gonna know. Go ahead.
We're talking about training today, about, like you were saying, leveling up,
Character progression,
character progression.
progressing in your
Mhm. So, the book that I wanted to talk about today, which is actually really fun because we've been talking about a lot of really popular books, but this is again one of those that is more of an unknown.
sleeper hit. You know when they say this is
Yeah,
don't
it's
sleep
one
on
that
this one. Yeah,
I pulled off of Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a subscription, you can get this free. It is called Red Rose Rising by AJ Manny, and it is the first in a series of books.
hmm
And it is a very, it's light, it's fluffy, but it has enough in there to be interesting. The reason why I wanted to talk about this in relation to training is because each of these books in the series, starting with this one, really does focus in on writing and preparing for a task. I'm going to try and kind of give a synopsis without spoiling it too much. So, a teaser without spoilers.
that is hard to do because on
It
some of the other
is.
reviews that you've done, I think you said, "Oh, this is gonna be spoiler," spoiler, and then you you did the whole book, and I was like, "But you were excited,"
Yeah.
and so I was like,
Well,
"Go
I'm
ahead."
going to try
Yeah,
and tease it without spoiling.
it's hard,
So,
but try. You can do it. You can do it.
thanks.
Yeah.
But the basic, the way that it starts is you see a princess in a kingdom,
hmm
and you also kind of hear that there are other kingdoms surrounding this kingdom. And she is restless, can't sleep. She decides to go up to a kind of a secret passageway to a tower and ends up falling asleep in the tower. When she wakes up, she realizes that she's coming down and there's been a an invasion of her castle while she was asleep. And as she's trying to find out what's happened, she realizes that her family has all been killed, or the king, queen, and her brother. And she runs into a soldier who kind of grabs her and swings her out of sight, and realizes very quickly that he realizes who she is and that she's the one that they've been looking for, and decides to sneak her out rather than turn her over. He has her pretend to be dead. He carries her out. She also finds out while he's getting her out of the castle that he is a prince of an invading kingdom, and that this was one of their neighboring kingdoms that was doing this to her. So she is snuck out. She's kind of shell shocked at everything, obviously. I think that kind of goes without.
And they explain why he's helping because it sounds like he's working against his own
Right. She
nation.
doesn't understand at first. You do find out fairly quickly that he and his brother were not wanting, and they actually, their father, the king, had ordered the attack while they were out because he knew that they would stand against him invading this kingdom. And so they had raced there to try and stop it and were too late to do anything but to sneak the princess out at that point. But she gets, he kind of takes her out to the woods and tells her he's going to send her help, that she needs to start running. And then she's joined not long after by a servant girl from her castle and a young soldier. And that which we find out later that the young soldier is actually the prince's younger brother, so he's also a prince. But they are taken, the prince, the young prince, leads her and the servant to a neighboring kingdom. So she escapes. It's difficult, you see kind of at the very beginning that she, as a princess, has been very pampered. She has never really pushed herself to even, the physicality of having to run through the woods and just kind of forage for food and all of that, at the very beginning is very physically taxing on her.
She
And
broke a nail.
all of the emotions that she's going through. I mean, she's not the I broke a nail
Okay.
princess,
Okay.
but it's still have never really pushed herself or trained at all to handle that level of physicality. But she gets to the neighboring kingdom, which it's a different kingdom, and you find out that there's like 5 kingdoms that are all connected. So she's, not going to the one that invaded her, but to another one. And come to find out, the king of the country that this prince sends her to is her grandfather, which she never knew that her mother, the queen, was his daughter. And
Is it an
her
arranged marriage or
parents,
something like that, or some kind of marriage
no,
of pop political, you
they
know?
they had met at a dance and fallen in love.
Oh,
It was a love
the
match.
real way.
hmm
Okay. Sorry.
After finding out, that this was her grandfather and that he actually did not know that she existed. Apparently, her parents had cut off all contact and kind of closed down their kingdom 18 years ago, right before or right after she had been born. And nobody really knows why her parents had not announced her. The king, and it was also one of the things that when the soldiers were invading her, the castle, they were like, what about the rumors of a princess? So they knew that maybe she was there, but they weren't sure that she even existed. So her existence had been kept a secret from all of the surrounding kingdoms, which she was not aware of. And her grandfather, is finding out that she exists for the first time. They knew about her older brother, but didn't know that she had been born. And she had never known that he was her grandfather, any of that. So after kind of having, a little bit of time to process and to find out, that she has a cousin also that was in that, he's one of the princes. And it's kind of put to her of, okay, well, what do you do now? Are you going to just hide and sit down, or do you want to train and take back your kingdom? She makes the decision, I can't allow my people to suffer under the rule of this mad, evil king who, the one who invaded her kingdom, has this reputation of, he had lost his wife several years ago and had kind of actually gone mad. Yeah.
Hmm.
So she's going, for my people's sake, I'm going to do whatever I can, even though she's looking at it going, well, what can I do? And her grandfather says, we'll support you, we'll back you up. And he says also, come to find out that her cousin, the prince that had rescued her, and the princes of the other kingdoms had all kind of bonded together and trained together. They had a training center set up kind of in the middle of all of their kingdoms that they all met together and trained at regularly. So, what do they decide to do? They decide, well, we're going to take the princess to this training center and we're going to teach her how to fight. And we're all going to support her. We're all going to come together with her. Even the son of the king who invaded her country is like, yes, I will support you. What my father did was wrong. So he decides that he's going to rebel against his father as much as he can and try to work among his own people to get support, whatever support he can again, so that their stated goal, we're going to take back our kingdom, rescue the people. I think that's all that I'm going to give at this moment, except for the fact that this also has magic in it. So you have, kind of the mystery of why she was hidden from the world is there's a magical reason. So if you're not interested in magic, you won't like these books. But if you are, you might have a reason to read it beyond kind of. I think that the plot just seems a little simplistic, but when you
Yeah.
add magic into it, then it takes on a whole another level of complexity to it. So
Well, the what's the level of detail that's given in the training? It doesn't have to be like
mm,
uber detailed, but
that
but
actually
you see a
is
progression over time.
right. That's actually one of the
You know,
things that I really did appreciate about this series. That is that you get very much the daily and the different routines that she goes through and that kind of stuff. It's probably not as detailed as, your Karate Kid or some of your movies are going to show you, but for a book, it is quite and for a romance fantasy magic book, the amount of level of emphasis they put on the training it's a lot. So it was kind of cool.
the thing about training is you can take someone from a novice. Let's say you mentioned Karate Kid. You've got Daniel Larusso from Karate Kid who's learning from Mr. Miyagi
Mhm.
and learning these lessons, getting better. You see them go from someone who questions the training they're given, because as you know from the movie, he's telling him, wax on, wax off. And that seems like, and this is something that you see a lot with a lot of, this is karate, but you see a lot in kung fu movies. You see sometimes they make them carry heavy weights like
Mhm.
water up. It's a trope. Even they carry weights up of heavy water up these long stairs, and only the one who is going to persevere and go. This is you're not learning. I came here to learn how to fight. Really, that's going to be a side effect. What we're going to do is birth in you perseverance and sometimes even
There's a
perseverance in
level
the faith.
of conditioning, of
Yeah.
endurance and strength training that is there, as well as just the actual physical mechanics
Some of
of
my favorite
fighting,
movies,
whether it's
yeah,
sword or actual wrestling type fighting
or like
or
boxing, yeah.
yeah, wrestling, boxing, sword training, or what else am I thinking?
Magic in Harry Potter.
Magic, yeah.
In Harry Potter, we see him come in having a little bit of skill. And he progresses through like how many years? 7, 8 years. I don't know. What does he graduate? Do they do like high school? Does it?
Okay, there's 7 years, but he doesn't actually. The seventh year is them searching for the Horcruxes. They don't
Okay,
actually. They're not
okay. And
actually
then
in the school
it
for that one.
culminates in the battle of Hogwarts,
Hmm.
which is a a big part of his training is just what he's doing, his mission is teaching him a lot.
And of course, in books and movies, you tend to have the training montage, right, where you're not getting every second of everything that's happening. You kind of are. You're seeing bits and pieces of it.
Those are fun. It can be,
Mhm.
but it can be kind of a cliche in some places. But you kind of like it. You expect it, and you're like, "Oh, what are they going to do? That's going to be neat." But sometimes to really buy in, when you have a long form storytelling, like a longer movie, or a longer series, you don't necessarily want those montages. Montages is compressed time. It's not decompressed, it's compressed time. Many times they'll play something, if we're in an 80s movie like Rocky or whatever, we'll have a suitably cheesy, really, driving force soundtrack with some really positive lyrics. You're going to do it. You're going to make it. It's really cheesy, but you love it nostalgically. But if you really want a serious book where you don't have music, if you have a serious book, you don't want to just gloss over it with some paragraphs saying, "Oh, they trained really hard," and
Right.
the reader, and also the viewer is going to go, "For real?"
Well,
And
you
and
want
they
to see the parts where they learn something and where there's those breakthrough moments where it actually affects the story.
the aha
Right.
in a way.
You want to see the I've learned something and then the callback to it in the future where it's like that skill came in handy. You want to see the application, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of storytelling is that those moments of connection where it's like we saw them learn it. We saw these breakthrough moments. We saw the effort that they put in and then we saw the payout that happened.
They do that in the Karate Kid movies by having a moment where he gets full of himself or whatever after all this training, and he needs to find a peace and not and he does a Tai Chi move that he taught him to calm down and to, you know, and all that, and then he does the move and it distracts the bully or the bad guy, and he's like, what is he doing? And, you know, and everybody goes, oh, he's doing the thing. Yeah, there's always a callback. Callbacks just reward you for paying attention, is what it is.
Or the moment where you were just they're weak and they have that kind of that Achilles heel, you know, where it's like there's something that they just can't get and they just can't master. And then when it really matters, they're able to actually do it. And it's like, you know,
Yeah, it's a rousing moment, and you can have those in books as
Mhm.
well. You
Oh yeah.
don't need you don't need a soundtrack in a book. The soundtrack is in your head, so you don't need something to cue you into, oh, this is the moment. It's all in how the author can portray it and write it, and really give it its due. Well, how does that work out when you don't buy that the character has these abilities, or you know, you don't see any clue that they know how to do these things, they just do, and that turns off readers, it turns off viewers so quickly. It's almost become a thing, and it's talked about online a lot. It's the Mary Sue syndrome, and you have a character that just they're just really good at things, and that there's no struggle,
Mm.
there's no failure, because to show failure would mean, oh, they're lesser. When they don't understand, they're not understanding the primary thing that we connect with the characters in these books with is we fail too.
Where did Mary Sue come from? Is that
Oh,
some
really?
character?
Yes. I love when she asks these questions. Um, there was a fan fiction that a young lady wrote for Star Trek. It was an author insert. She writes herself in there as Lieutenant Mary Sue. And oh, Kirk is in love with her. And Spock too, but his emotions. I know it's like
Why do fanfics always have everybody in love with them?
because yeah, because it's their
It's their
dream.
fantasy.
Yeah, that's why they,
I
yeah,
don't know that if I had a fantasy that I would want multiple people in love with me. Honestly, that
that would
just
be stressful.
I maybe that's just having been married for over 20 years. I think that maybe I get how much work it is to be in love sometimes.
Thanks. Well,
So maybe it's
I
like,
just told you
you
I
know,
failed this weekend, so I guess it's, you know, admission time.
well, trying to actually juggle having more than one man in love with you and then having to choose which one and then having to live with like, well, what if you chose wrong and whatever, like just so much
Well,
simpler if you're just dealing with one.
vampire Jason or werewolf Jason? Which one? Which one is it?
That's that is one of my most disliked genres is the love triangle. I
Or
don't like it.
quadrangle? Or oh my word, no, you can't. I can't do it.
I would rather it just be clear and simple. Some things need to be complicated in books. I don't know that love does. Does that mean that I'm more of like an action or fantasy lover than a romance lover?
I would say
Maybe,
yes. I
maybe,
would
yeah.
say more so. Yeah. I again, I can't say for sure, but I
So
would
I
say
may
you
just
lean
have
more.
offended a whole bunch of people that are like, but I love romance and all
Okay,
of the
to
the
each his own.
yeah.
Now, if you said if you told
I'll
me,
probably cut all of that
well, no,
anyway.
if they told me what you're into, you said you're saying I like romance stuff. I was like, cool, and then they told you what kind, and you went and suddenly you went. Anyway, yeah. Uh, where do I go with that? So the key with that is it was the character knew all these different things, and they were either they have trauma built in. Oh, they had a, you know, I'm an orphan. My parents were killed, or you know, or this, that, and the other happened, and it's this backstory for backstory's sake, and you know, you even see some of that if you're not careful come into your role playing games that you play too, and you kind of go, I don't buy that. You have to kind of measure that out and see if it reads like it logically, if it makes sense. But sometimes it just seems like it's the character's the best ever, and they never fail, and everyone's always telling them how great they are. That's another.
You want to have a believable struggle because it's important to us. We know how hard preparation can be for something.
Even really smart and capable people
Right.
make
But
mistakes.
it's like with Mulan, why so many people didn't like the new remake
The
of
animated
Mulan.
versus the remake. There
Right.
we
In
go.
the
There we go.
animated, you had her actually learning. You see her training. You see her building the muscles and building the skills and all of that. And you connect to that. But then in the remake, it was like, well, she has magic and she can do all the things and she didn't have to work for it. And there was this letdown by people that watched it, I think, that they just went, well, she didn't even have to work for it. And we missed that. We liked that aspect of it. That she didn't just have the magic that, she didn't even have to work at. She didn't have to train in the magic. It's like, if you're going to introduce magic, then at least make that a part. There's some form of struggle in that too. Don't just have magic completely save the day. And there's now nothing. There's no struggle. There's nothing left to resolve.
Even even Beatrix from Kill Bill, the bride.
Mm.
When she has skill. She has some skill, some, right? Because remember when she goes to see Pai Mei, and he's very dismissive of her, and of course he's famously not an easy cat to get to know, and that's on purpose. It keeps you on your toes, and it keeps you in a way of respect, and then he'll open up, but only after a lot of pain. But he called out names of different moves, and she said, "Oh, tiger. Oh, this." So it shows she did have some training, but he was like, "No, your training is nothing." And he was hard on her, very hard on her, but she excelled at every moment. And say what you will, but she does dispatch Bill. It's not the name of the series. And she's riding in the convertible top down with her baby, her young daughter, with her, and mommy and daughter driving off in the sunset as the music plays. So who won? She did. She progressed. She even learned the forbidden technique that would not be taught to anybody ever. And Pai Mei taught it to her. Now she must have impressed him. So that says right there that she had some kind of spark. I don't like it when they go, when they say zero to hero, and was that song from Hercules, Zero to Hero in No Time Flat? Yeah, that's from Hercules, the cartoon. Zero to Hero in No Time Flat. I don't like to see somebody who has no skill, absolutely a zippo, and then they get to godlike.
But they
They
say
have to have
that, but that
something.
wasn't even what happened in
Right.
Hercules either. You have a
He had,
training
yeah,
montage
he
where
had
he
something.
had to be trained. He went to the fawn guy, right?
Yeah,
For
Phil
training.
Philoctetes or whatever his name is.
Yeah. It's been a little while since I've watched
Well,
Hercules.
he wasn't literally a zero. I was kind of using this the verse zero.
Right. And
Yeah,
even Superman, you see this training. He had to go off to his crystal cave, right? That's what it's called, right? Crystal cave?
the Crystal Cave.
Okay, thank you.
It's the
It's like,
Fortress of
please don't.
Solitude. Crystal,
Fortresses of Solitude. Why am I calling it?
because the Arthur book is called the Crystal
Oh,
Cave. But I
yeah.
love that. But hey, the Crystal
Arthur
Cave.
had to be trained. He
No,
had
the
to be
Crystal
turned into
Cave.
a squirrel and into a fish.
Yes, Merlin had a Crystal Cave, so you're not far off.
Okay.
You're correct without trying to be. So
But yeah,
you're
I mean,
awesome.
it really is one of those that I feel like you have more, at least if it's adventure or fantasy or, any kind of a hero tale type story where you have the struggle, you have, the beginning where it's like something happens, they realize that there's a need that they have to step up to fulfill, and then you have the training that happens before they actually are able to succeed, and
Shoot,
it's an
even
important
Bruce
part.
Wayne in Batman Begins, he says training is nothing. He's saying will is everything. So they even get a training montage in that. But the thing about it is, you don't, I think you don't reach that moment in many different books or films, which is like the what do you call it, the dark night of the soul, where they're faced with, they're on an upward success of trajectory of I'm making it, I'm helping out, and something happens where everybody's like, what are we going to do? And it's always this dark moment, and they have to pull up from that, and then you get into the, the rising action at the end. There's always that moment where you go, wow, they got really defeated. But was it because of training? Or was it because it was a demoralization or a revelation, a discovery that really just flattened them? Or was it lack
Mhm.
of training? How many times has it been lack of training? And how many times has it been just their own belief in them that they can do this?
It can be a lot of those. I mean, sometimes it's just that they were in the middle of training and hadn't had enough time to finish training. There's this time crunch to it,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
You never go into training and just have all the time in the world to do it. I guess there are
that
some
creates
books that I've
suspense.
read
That creates tension.
where you see a somebody who comes in and they're already fully trained, but you kind of read the story that it was like, their parents had raised them from the very beginning to know that something was coming that they had to train for and they had to prepare for. So you've got this really, larger than life character that is jumping into battles from the get go. But even then, I feel like most of the time there's this leveling up that happens even then, even when you already start out with this super high level
It
hero.
could be an attitude adjustment, or a spiritual or mental
Mhm.
leveling up,
Or even
because their
just
physical could just be like they're great, the
the
greatest sold
lone
swordsman
wolf
ever,
that
yeah.
needs to find and be able to accept help can be something where
Or find
they
community,
right, finding allies
family,
and
community,
right. That's a level of a story that
to let somebody in.
mhm,
Like Logan and his daughter, his clone daughter from the movie Logan. He has to let her in. He's very closed off, and he's got to let her in a little bit. It breaks my heart. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. Go ahead.
it's just there's lots of ways in books and stories that you see the training happening. And sometimes it's very literal, sometimes you kind of have to look for it a little bit more, but most of the time it's there. And I think that just it struck me as I'm sitting here examining this very common storytelling element of going, why is that so common? Why is this included so much? And why do we as humans resonate with this so much? Most of the time, we're not out there learning karate and or fencing or all of the
Or
different
magic.
martial arts or magic. We're
You
not
can't really learn
yeah,
sorcery,
we're not
really.
learning this in everyday life. Why is this something that resonates in us so much? And I think that we all do realize that even though we may not have those extremes, we all go through training in our own lives and we all have a call to level up in some way because we don't ever want to live our lives just existing. You want every day and every year, you want to look back and go, see how much I've grown, see where I've grown. And we know that it may be physical, it may be emotional, it may be spiritual. All of those different aspects of our being, hopefully we're doing all of those things. But we as humans, we don't like to just stagnate,
That's what I was thinking about. Is that we
right?
don't. I was thinking the same thing. We don't value stagnation. We value growth. We
Hmm.
value getting better. I mean, they even in social media have campaign or TV show. They say, "Do better." When you know
Hmm.
better, you do better. But if you don't see progression, then you're just staying where you're at. So even people that are not talking about spiritual growth or even growth in your faith, even they know these things. let's put it this way, there are people that spend more time building their body and learning all these skills and things like that. But what about your spirit?
Hmm.
What about, your inner self? Because there are those aspects of that that actually a lot of these real martial arts masters actually consider that to be the greater skill, the greater, because you're master over your own soul, your own self, and your own choices, your own emotions. You're master over that. And then the other, it's not that it comes easy, but it's secondary. It follows it. They always say the body follows the mind. That's why a lot of these movies they show somebody has to break somebody down. They may come in and go, "Well, I know everything," da, da, da. And that's another thing. Someone who acts like they know everything, they have to be taken down a peg and then built back up again. They have to empty out their cup, is what they call that.
It's interesting though,
Yeah.
because you look at your progression over your life, right? And you look at as children, one of the first things that we start out and that we look forward to as children is, oh, we're going to school, right? We're training. You enter this period and you know that it's going to be 12 years. You're going from kindergarten through high school, and that's a huge event in a child's life, graduation. And then a lot of times it's like, okay, and what's next? And there's just this transition period when you go from I'm getting to the end, I'm reaching the goal, and then you're going, oh wow, and now I have to actually, for so long it was just that was it. That was the end goal. And then going to now I have to actually start living and start doing something. It's the beginning of the rest of your life. And there's this kind of almost shock that happens, I feel like, in most kids of that transition and going from childhood to adulthood that's marked by graduation from high school. And
Well,
then
there's no train
it's
track. I mean, because
right.
when you get in school, the track is already laid, and all you have to do is progress along that track, and then suddenly the track stops,
And I
and
mean, I
you have
think
your
a lot of
freedom
times
to figure it
the
out.
transition to college is a lot easier for people to make because it's kind of
Yeah,
a postponement of having to do the adult thing because you're
you're
just kind
doing
of
school still.
continuing on the school stuff. And you have people that will just keep going on that. And it's, I almost wonder sometimes if it's just become comfortable. And I am not downplaying at all higher education because higher education is great.
For
you know,
for many people,
for
it
a
is.
lot of
Yeah,
people, it is. And we need those who just become the lifelong learners and the scholars and the ones that then turn into the teachers. They're going for the master's and the doctorate, and then they become the professors. And I think that higher level of education, but it really does. It's just like they got on the train at kindergarten and they never ever got off. They just
it
went,
can't be
okay, this is
knowledge
this
for
is my thing.
knowledge's sake. You have to do something with it in
Right.
the world. You can't just be all about self improvement alone.
Well, for most people, yeah. I mean, like I said, there are those that become the
Can't
professors
take it
and
with you.
that really do, or the book writers. I feel like those are the ones that are just the lifelong learners that actually end up being able to make a living off of learning. But that's a very small percentage of the population that's where they go. And yeah, I'm one of those that kind of looks at those and goes, that is what I dream of to actually be part of that because I love learning so much. But for most of people, for most people, it is going to be, eventually that learning period ends and then you enter the working world in whatever capacity that is. And then again, you start over with the training and the learning and the growing and the conquering, and it's just this cycle that keeps on going. But I remember when I saw an old boss of mine that he retired, and I met him in a grocery store parking lot, him and his wife kind of just catching up, what are you doing nowadays? And he was like, you know what? I have decided to take up learning piano. He was like, "It's something that I always wanted to do and I never had time to do." And
There was always something else in the way sometimes.
right, I mean, he was just busy. He was running a business and he said, I guess I just had the realization one day that I didn't need to continue having this something that I wanted to learn that I never got to. And
Mm.
I may be in my 60s, but I'm not too old to learn. So I'm going to start over and I'm going to learn how to play the piano. And it was like, oh, well, that's really inspiring. You've got somebody that's starting over again, even at retirement age, that is willing to take on a brand new skill. And I don't know, it just struck me as we really never do stop learning. And even if it's, like for me, last year, I went on a physical health journey and kind of changed my life there. And a lot of people do the same thing. So you've got the physical, you've got the mental, you've got the different skills that people can learn. And like you were saying, I mean, I think the most important one of those to not stagnate in is, and something that a lot of people do kind of ignore the aspect is the spiritual.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those that we're so busy a lot of times chasing after the physical and the intellectual,
Temporal things.
right, that we don't think about the fact that we're called to something higher in the spiritual. And as we were sitting there thinking about training and leveling up, that was one that I went to, was in First Corinthians. Paul, he's talking to the people in this church saying, by this time, you should be drinking or eating meat and you're still drinking milk. I also, who was it? Alyssa Childers. I was listening to something that she was talking about too this last week, and that also was, she was talking about that verse and really just encouraging people not to stagnate spiritually, that we need to learn and we need to grow because we're called to become teachers. We can't stay babies in our spiritual understanding.
Well, the progression that it's talking about is progression in terms of food that you can digest. You progress from baby to child to adult, and you can handle more. So we're going to give you more. Faithful in the small things, faithful in large. There's a progression in terms of heavy things. We don't give the heaviest spiritual things to a small child. We teach them about faith in God. We give them what they can handle. If they show they can handle more, we give them more. You don't just lay a ton of bricks on them as far
Kind of
as
what
faith.
Bible stories do you teach the kids? Every child knows the story of Noah and the ark, but how many know the story about what happens with Noah and his sons afterwards?
Right. How many know about David and Goliath, where he fought a physical giant with the power of the Lord? What about David and Bathsheba, where he was fighting a spiritual giant and he failed massively?
How many people know the story of Joseph being sold off by his brothers, but how many know about his older brother Judah and Tamar?
Yeah, those are harder to take. And you can't just take a Bible and go, "Hey kids, read your Bible," and you hand it to them. You have to guide them into these things because these are real people going through real situations. And it does not say that these acts and things that happen in the Bible are excused. They're not said, oh,
Mhm.
hey, it's okay for you to do because this character in the Bible did it. That's wrong. You have to take it in context. You have to look at it and say, what does God say, and what's the message here? What did God levy against them for their actions? It didn't, just because someone does something. These are all a little complex. Now, one thing you don't want to lose in your progression, okay, is the faith of a child. It even says,
Hmm.
the children come to Jesus and they said, "Oh, don't turn them away because of faith of a child." He's trying to say that that's something to be admired and sought after in adults, is the faith of a child that will just come. It will come to Jesus and approach and say, he's approachable. Because a lot of times you couldn't approach rabbis. They were, they because of, by virtue of knowing all this stuff, they were given a place of honor. And you just can't come up. You come over and you tug on their tassels, or tug on their priestly robes. That's disrespectful. Show a lot of great, and you got to be careful with that because you get a little full of yourself. But the thing is, though, Jesus was approachable. Jesus was the presence of God. You didn't have to go through 15 different layers of the temple to get to the presence of God, in the Ark of the Covenant, the outer court, inner court, all the holy of holies. He is the Holy of Holies. He is the Holy of Holies in flesh. You can approach him, right? So those are some of the things that he was looking for in the faith of a child. So you can bring to a child what they can handle, and sometimes some kids can handle more than most. This is a challenging world we live in. You have to use a little bit of discernment. You are your child's mentor. You are their greatest teacher. They may go to a teacher for a handful of hours every day, but you're the greatest guide and mentor and teacher they're ever going to have. That's a great burden, but one you shouldn't take lightly, but also be and just take it with a little bit of gratitude and humility.
I was thinking about with Ethan, with having a son with autism. I think that also was one of the things that made me look at learning in a little bit different way, because I think that we are kind of conditioned to, and you hear it, right? You hear, well, the brain, like, you hear the different points at which the brain is developed, or like the character is developed, and like you kind of stop, and then you're formed at that point in your
You
life.
are who you are. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't remember what the age is that supposedly it's like, okay, your character is set right now, or your learning slows down at this time, and that kind of stuff. But when you have a child with autism that just learns at such a slower level, it really does become this difference in, it's no longer this race that you get where, for typical children, you're going, oh, well, we need to have them, the kindergarten readiness and the reading readiness, where they're,
Those
know all of
milestones.
their, yeah, those things become so different, where I'm going, yeah, why do we ever think that there's a point at which we stop learning as humans? It's just not my mindset anymore. I'm going, yeah, I've got a 17-year-old son that we're still working on just the basics of self-care with him, of learning to take care of himself and be able to dress himself and bathe himself and go to the bathroom by himself, and all of those things that just typically you have a child able to do by the time they're, what, 3 or 4.
Take that for granted,
Right.
even.
And we're still working on those, and we're still progressing. And I'm going, there's no stopping point with that. I know that with him, if we're still working on this when he is in his 20s or his 30s or his 40s, however long it takes, he's going to be learning and he's going to be growing the entire time. There's no limit to, oh, well, if he doesn't get it by this time, then he just won't ever get it. That's like, that would be bizarre to actually
That's
say or think
it's easy to
to me.
say, but it all depends on your your faith that it's gonna work out and that you love this child. This is your child. You love them. So progression becomes a different metric. It becomes a different measurement than than is typical. But you just have to have a lot more patience than you would with a typical child. And it may be a little bit of a longer process.
But I guess that would be my encouragement from my perspective. It's probably a little bit of a unique well, not unique. It's a niche perspective, right? There's a
Can
lot
be.
of autism parents out there that are going to resonate with that, of just kind of relearning the feeling that I think that a lot of people have of there's this point at which you stop learning and that you stop growing. And it just really is, don't, if we can say that for our kids and go, there's not ever a point at which he's going to stop learning, then there's never a point at which I'm going to limit myself and my capacity to learn. And that's in everything. I'm not going to put a stopping point on my physical. I'm not going to put a stopping point on my mental. And I'm not going to put a stopping point on my spiritual. I want to be as passionate about that leveling up process when I'm 80 as I am today, of just going, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. I'm looking at this amazing world that God has put out there that's so huge and so big. And there's always more for me to learn. And that's not overwhelming, that's inspiring, that's incredible, that's awesome. That we have a God of infinite knowledge. We're never going to run out of the more.
And I don't think you ever really do stop learning. And scientists even say that if you do have elements in your family where family history of mental acuity issues, as far as getting older, like senility, dementia, things like that, they say the more you read, the more you gather information, sharpness, the more that you apply those things that you're learning. I don't think learning ever really stops. I think we just stop trying, or we distract ourselves with other things. I'm never going to stop learning about trivial stuff that I may never use, but hopefully I can use that for good. I can I can use this information for good, and for the good of my family and for the good of my good of my physical, mental, and spiritual health. But yeah, never stop learning. Keep progressing. Keep leveling up.
Thank you for coming on this journey with us, and I hope that you are inspired just by this chit chat, reminiscing, to look for those inspiring moments in the books, and actually think about how I can apply this to my life. What can I learn new today? How can I level up? What area am I the most underleveled in that I need to work on next? I think we're going to end there, and see you next time.
Bye. See you next week.